Yo, what's up? It's the Buff Missionary again. We back at it. We out here going back through the book, Steps to Christ, continuing on this learning and growing experience that I've been really blessed to be a part of. I'd like to encourage you again. If this is your first time tuning in, like, subscribe, share, and go back and check out the other videos, because this is just one in a long line of just knowledge being dropped out here from this book. Not from me. Not from me, but from this book and how we can apply it to our lives. I really see it as a connecting bridge between our practical day-to-day experience and the spiritual life and experience. I think that too often we look at these things as two separate things and really never get to see the practicality and the benefit of learning spiritual things and actually applying them into our day-to-day. So that's what this is about for me. Let's jump right back into it and keep it going. Starts off by saying this is the same figure to which Christ referred in his conversation with Nathanael when he said, "You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." This is so interesting to me because, and just to clarify, this same figure that we're talking about, if you missed the last video, we were talking about the ladder that Jacob saw in his vision when he was fleeing from home, fleeing from his brother, feeling in the really deep pit of despair and hopelessness. And we find the same thing in the New Testament as well. So I think that's a really cool connection. It wasn't a coincidence that Jesus used this illustration when he wanted to say this to Nathanael in this moment, because not only is he bringing back up the past of those people, but he wanted to show you the connection that is there and just how important it is to see Christ as this connecting ladder between earth and heaven and the purity that's there, that there can be a connection between the two, even though for us it's hard to imagine that at times. In the apostasy, man alienated himself from God. Earth was cut off from heaven. It's a real perspective shift when you think about this, because a lot of people, even in their religious views, think that God separated himself from humanity. Like it was something more on his end as opposed to something that we did as mankind. But the apostasy, this idea of sin that entered into nature and into being, the definition of sin is actually separation. Like it's talking about separation from God. We think of sin today and we think, oh, this bad thing, that bad thing, killing someone is a sin, or stealing is a sin, or telling a lie is a sin. But that's just kind of a surface level, because all of these things end up contributing to this separation from God. That's the underlying thing, where every different sin is actually the same thing. I'm not saying that each sin means the same thing or impacts people the same way, but I am saying that each sin is accomplishing the same thing in the person ultimately, all right? Ultimately at the core, which is separating that individual from God. In the apostasy, man alienated himself from God and earth was cut off from heaven. We see it in Adam and Eve, right? They communed with God daily. It was like this. God comes down and creates humankind. He makes them in his image, and they're tight. It's like this. But when sin wiggled in, a gap formed. And it was sin that was here in the middle. That was the thing that was between God and man and keeping them from enjoying that communion with one another once again. Across the gulf that lay between, there could be no communion. And how could you? You have this huge obstacle that's in the middle, one person that's holy on this side, and the holy beings that he created have fallen into this pit. It's like we're not on the same page anymore. We're not speaking the same language anymore. The things that are true to me are not true to you anymore. So it's hard for us to figure out how we're going to work and live together like this. But through Christ, earth is again linked with heaven. You had sin in the middle that separated it. Jesus took that sin and became sin for us, as the Bible says. And because of that, grabbing onto earth and our arms outstretched and the throne of heaven, he's able to tie us back together again. But here's the thing. Just because he came down and died for us doesn't mean that we all suddenly have a free pass. We have to accept the gift. We've talked about that before. There's a lot of things that God has done for us, and our knowledge of those things only gets us so far. We have to act on the things that we know. We have to accept the things that we know and live in the acceptance of that. That's how we get the benefit from it. With his own merits, Christ has bridged the gulf which sin had made so that the ministering angels can hold communion with man. Christ connects fallen man in his weakness and helplessness with the source of infinite power. Now, there's a lot of irony here, because what we're really talking about is actually hinting at another verse that I don't remember at the moment, but it says something to the effect that when I am weak, I am strong. I don't know if Paul said it or someone else. If you know, drop it in the comments, let me know. But the statement says, when I am weak, that's when I am strong. And this statement is fully diving into the acceptance of the fact that within sin, we are weakened. We are powerless to do anything to save ourselves in that pit of quicksand. But Christ in his power, now Christ gets a chance to shine in his power, because I'm no longer trying to do it by myself. I realize that I can't make it by myself, and I'm taking my hands off the wheel so he can come in and take control and actually do something. When I'm weak, then I am strong. Think about it back to Adam and Eve, right? What was the lie that the serpent told them? Oh, well, if you eat the fruit, you're going to have all the wisdom. You're going to have all the knowledge. You're going to have all of this power, right? So he deceived them into trying to get all the power, and they ultimately became weak as a result through the sin. They were trying to be strong in and of themselves. They were trying to have that strength, that power, that wisdom for themselves, and it made them weak. And here we are on the flip side, thousands of years later, where we get a chance to embrace the weakness, to understand that we are weak, but to realize that it's one of the best positions we can be in, because we get a chance to submit to a power that's bigger than us, that's better than us, to do something for us that we have no shot of doing for ourselves. When I am weak, then I am strong. The encouragement here is pretty simple. If we understand that there's a connection through Christ that bridges the gap between our sinful reality and the perfect reality of heaven, and we accept that, now we're putting ourselves in a position to live a much better life, a much more positive experience that can be a benefit that we'll see in our lives and the lives of those around us. But it takes admitting that weakness, and that's hard sometimes. Y'all know how it is. In the lives that we live, we want to do things on our own. There's that pride, which also plays into sin. It's a part of our nature to want to do things on our own and to get credit for the things that we do. We all feel that to some degree. Young kids feel it to a certain degree. We feel it as adults to a certain degree. But we have to let go of that. This is an area where nothing we do, it doesn't matter how powerful we are, it doesn't matter how wise we are or think that we are, we can't do this for ourselves. Our level of accomplishment means nothing here, and it will only prove us to be weak. The harder that we push towards our own standards and those high levels of wisdom or whatever it is you're trying to achieve to get yourself salvation, it's not going to work. We only prove our weakness by trying to do things on our own. There's strength in community. There's strength in the community and fellowship with Christ and with God. And that's the community that will bring us towards salvation. The gap has been bridged. Not by your power, not by my power, but by Christ. And we can walk on that bridge. We can climb that bridge. We can climb the ladder, and we can make it across the gap to be in harmony and communion with God once again, just like Adam and Eve were before the fall. I'm going to try not to let myself get in the way of that. And I hope you try not to let yourself get in the way of that either. Hey, it's the Buff Missionary. We out here and we out. Like, subscribe, and share. Feel free to put your comments down below. Until next time, peace.